Colorado.
Rise to offer my amendment that redirects $2 million to hazardous fuels reduction activities within the Bureau of Land Management to prevent catastrophic wildfires and save lives. The year I was elected, Colorado suffered the worst fire season in Colorado history with the 3 largest recorded wildfires we have ever had. Hundreds of homes were destroyed and evacuated, and Coloradans endured more than 100 days of fire. The Cameron Peak fire burned more than 208,000 acres and more than 460 structures to the tune of $6 million in property losses. The East Troublesome fire on the border of my district killed 2 people. Coloradans also suffered severe health issues resulting from significant smoke from these fires. Wildfire smoke causes serious disorders, including eye and respiratory tract infections, reduced lung function, bronchitis, exacerbation of asthma, and even premature death. Catastrophic wildfires also cause significant damage to the environment. A few years ago, NASA concluded that one catastrophic wildfire can emit more carbon emissions in just a few days than all of the vehicle emissions in an entire state over the course of an entire year. Decades of mismanagement has left our nation's federal lands vulnerable to insects and disease and ripe for catastrophic wildfires. The good news is there is finally significant bipartisan support throughout the country to prevent wildfires, and the Forest Service is seeking to treat 20 million acres of national forests and grasslands and 30 million acres of state, local, and tribal and private lands over the next 10 years. However, we need to do more, as federal agencies have stated that more than 1 billion acres throughout the country are currently at risk of catastrophic wildfires. Our federal lands are overgrown and poorly managed, making them more susceptible to wildfire, disease, and even bark beetle attacks. There are federal lands in Colorado and the West where we once had 50 to 100 trees per acre, but now we see 500 to 1,000 trees per acre, proving the overgrowth of our forests. There are also 6 billion standing dead trees in the western United States. Some people call that a problem. I call it a tinderbox waiting to ignite and burn. Fuels treatments are effective, and federal agencies have made clear, and I quote, over 90% of the fuel treatments are effective in changing the fire behavior and or helping with control of the wildfire, end quote. Let's put the lives of the American people first, take significant action to benefit our environment by passing my hazardous fuels reduction amendment and redirecting $2 million to these hazardous fuels reductions activities within the Bureau of Land Management, and I encourage the adoption of my amendment. Madam Chair, I reserve.
The gentlewoman from Colorado reserve. Purpose does the gentlewoman from Minnesota seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I claim time in opposition to this amendment.
The gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, I'm very, very supportive of increasing funding in this important program. And I want to thank the chairman for his work over the years, hard work and bipartisan work in combating wildland fires. But I simply cannot support the offset proposed for this amendment. Funding for the EPA in the base bill is already cut $1.8 billion below the enacted level, and this reduction makes it impossible for the EPA to carry out its mission. We need the worker bees of the EPA to keep the EPA moving forward for the American public. So I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I yield back my time.
The gentlewoman from Minnesota yields back her time. The gentlewoman from Colorado is recognized.
Madam Chair, I am proud of my party's work in reducing taxpayer spending by $1.8 billion in this bill. And I also am encouraged to find even more offsets where we can redirect funding and put them to a more appropriate use for the taxpayer, showing that their best interest is what we are all here serving in Washington, D.C. on their behalf for. Madam Chair, again, I support the adoption of my amendment that redirects $2 million for the fuels hazardous management in the Bureau of Land Management. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman from Colorado yields back.